Are you?
Why should you choose Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fairmount City? Why wouldn't you choose them? At Nolf, their sales are speedy and include upfront and straightforward pricing. If it's service and parts you're after, they have skilled technicians who are factory trained while offering knowledgeable parts experts. Maybe you need Nolf's full service body shop offering top quality collision repair to all makes and models of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Or do you want to cruise the highway in a clean, shiny vehicle thanks to Nolf's detailing service? No matter your needs, Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fairmont City is there for you. Find out more at nolfchryslerdodge.com. Welcome to another edition of Nolf Bites here from Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fairmont City. I'm Chris Rossetti. I'm alongside Ronnie Geist and Andy Byers. Another edition here of Nolf Bites, another playoff edition of Nolf Bites as the playoffs got underway last week. And what was your biggest surprise, Ronnie?
Well, it has to be the Keystone game. I mean, obviously, I picked Ridgeway to take that game. I thought it was a little bit of an upset by taking Ridgeway, but Keystone came out, played hard, put points up on the board, and Ridgeway's a tough team, but you score some points on it, it changes the dynamic of everything a little bit.
I thought DuBois going up to Cathedral Prep, winning that game up there, that was pretty big. I mean, first playoff win since '96 for the Beavers. Didn't see that one necessarily coming.
No, I probably because we don't see a lot of Cathedral Prep. Obviously, Farrell played them tough, so you figure that they got to be good. But yeah, that's definitely a huge surprise. Good for that program. First in how many years you say?
28.
28. You figure that division they play in, it's always stacked. It's always tough.
No, they're the only 5A team in District 9. And, then you have to go outside of District 9. And again, I mean, going up to Cathedral Prep and winning a football game up there, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. And kudos to TJ Wingard and the players. And I mean, to go up there and win a game and win a playoff game and that be your first playoff win in 28 years, that's a big deal. Outside of that, I don't know if anything. I mean, Punxsutawney sort of gave away a game to USO in some ways. They were up at the half, they were down, then they go back up with a field goal, and then they get a pick six right after the field goal. And it was a great pick six by Maddox Hetrick too. Stepped in front. It was going to be kind of like one of those screen / like swing passes towards the running back, and he stepped in between the quarterback and the running back and picked it off and went the other way. And so now they're up. But then on the extra point, and they've got a great kicker, and on the extra point, they fumble the snap. and so they're, instead of being up 8, they're only up 7. And then first play from scrimmage, USO throws a halfback option pass, and it goes for a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion, and now all of a sudden they're back in front. And then Punxsutawney comes down late in the game, 2 minutes to go, kicks another field goal to go back up in front. And you're thinking, okay. And then first play from scrimmage, kid comes in motion from right to left, takes a pitch and hits the corner and is gone, like 80 yards for a touchdown. And then there's a pick six by USO, and that was pretty much it.
Well, that's the problem playing against teams you don't know anything about. You don't know the athletes. It's easy. We play each other a lot around here, so you can pick and choose. Hey, this kid's a returning kid. He's good. But when a team comes in you know very little about, a lot of times those big explosive plays happen. You try to hone in on what you know, but
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And if they, sometimes they got a guy off the bench that they got 1 or 2 plays for. And I don't know the circumstance, but, you get 1 or 2 plays for that one guy and you're not ready for it. You just think he's another guy coming in and bang, you get hit with an 80-yarder.
Over in District 10, I don't know how much you guys might have paid attention to this on Saturday night. Did you see what happened in the Mercyhurst Prep Sharpsville game?
Just from your website, I was checking it out. It sounded pretty dramatic.
It was 31-13 Mercyhurst Prep with 10 minutes to play. 35-31 Sharpsville, final score. They scored with just over 2 minutes left, kicked the onside kick, got the onside kick, had 4th and 22 after getting the onside kick. Throw a 28-yard pass for a first down. 2 plays later, they hit a kid in the end zone. Bit of a controversial touchdown. Kid caught the ball. As he's catching the ball, he's hit. Ball gets jarred loose.
Keep in mind, though, rule in high school different than the rule on Sundays. On Sundays, it's absolutely not a catch. Got to maintain possession through the end of the play in the NFL. Not the rule in high school football. You don't have to maintain possession. You have to have possession. Possession is considered bringing the ball into your body and before you lose it. Now, in this case, he kind of caught it in his body, so it was bang, bang. What I like is the officials made the call right away. There was no, huddling up afterward and then determining it. The guy made the call. We don't have replay in high school football. I'm not even sure how replay in high school football would work. But what a comeback for Sharpsville. What a game. That's one of those instant classics that they're going to talk about in Sharpsville from now until 100 years from now.
From a fan and a coaching perspective, I can tell you we appreciate it when the referee makes the call right away. It puts a sense of clarity to it almost. The worst is, I get it, you got to get the call right, but as a coach, they get together and you're like, man, like the suspense kills you. So kudos to that officiating crew for jumping on that and making that call right away.
Yeah, I think it lessens the controversy. There's always going to be controversy, and the bigger the sport, the bigger the moment, the bigger the controversy, right? And it's high school football, and that's a big deal in many places. That's the reason we have a show here, right? And but give them, I like the idea that they called it right away, and it is what it is, and it's still an uphill climb for Sharp, so they got to play Farrell. I got a chance to see Farrell on Saturday night, against Seneca. They're what you would expect from Farrell. They've got some explosive kids that can put points up on the board in a hurry. They're going to have to clean things up, though. They committed 15 penalties for 110 yards in a game in which they mercy ruled Seneca. But the longer you go along, and head coach Ian Pegues told me that after the game, he's like, the longer you go along in the playoffs, you can't have 15 penalties for 110 yards.
I understand they lost a few kids to transfer.
They did.
Early, before the season, obviously.
Two big ones, actually.
Yeah, that's definitely a difference maker. You're talking, from my understanding, they were like D2, D1 kids that for real are going to make a huge difference from the start. That doesn't justify the multiple penalties.
No, and you know what? They played a difficult schedule. Their losses were all the playoff teams in mainly all close games. Lost by 7 to Sharon, lost in a close game to Hickory, lost by 7 to Cathedral Prep. Lost to Ursuline, Ohio. And then the one surprise loss was probably Fort LaBeouf, but Fort LaBeouf turned out to be a decent football team too at the end of the day. So it was, it's an interesting Farrell team. They're, you throw them in Region 1 over here in District 9, and they probably don't lose more than a game or two.
Yeah.
And we'll find out exactly, because if they beat Mercyhurst Prep, then they're going to play Central Clarion. Or not Mercyhurst Prep, Sharpsville. The winner of that Sharpsville Farrell game will host Central Clarion in 2 weeks.
So Clarion have a week off, and then they'll play.
Yeah, and that game will be at the District 10 champions home field.
Okay.
So it'll be either at Sharpsville. Now Sharpsville is a combo of West Middlesex and I think that's Sharpsville that did the co-op with West Middlesex. And if you remember, West Middlesex was always really, really good.
Yeah. Hey, one thing we're forgetting, we changed our location. There's this really nice car behind us.
Yeah, why don't you guys talk a little bit about what you got back here?
Andy, why don't you tell us about it? You know a little more history about it than I do.
Oh, that is a 20.
Hold on, Andy. We're going to get your mic. There we go. Sorry.
That one there's a 2012 Challenger RT, right around 80,000 miles, I believe. So nice car, clean, manual transmission, 6-speed. So it's got the Hemi engine, 6-speed. What else do you need?
Plus the exhaust, right? He upgraded the exhaust on it.
It's got a MagnaFlow exhaust.
So is it for sale here?
It is.
How much?
$17,998. You can own that.
$17,999.
$17,997 for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good price.
Yeah.
I can't drive a manual.
They're all good.
I can't drive a manual.
The girl in the back will show you how.
I don't got 17 grand sitting around that I can just use on it for vanity's sake.
You don't think that'd look good pulling into Friday night games?
I think it would look great pulling into Friday night games, but I don't think it would. The trunk looks like it would fit what I need, but the back seat wouldn't fit what I need.
The seat folds down, you'd be fine.
We're gonna get it. You guys need to sell it to somebody who's going to appreciate it, though. I'll be the first one to admit that I am not a car guy. Like it's a nice looking vehicle. I'll be I'm not naive enough to say it's not a nice looking vehicle, but like a car like that would be completely lost on me. like guys like you, I feel like if you guys owned that, like there'd be an appreciation that goes. For me, it's just a vehicle. I need my car to get me from point A to point B, and as long as it does that, that's all I care about.
Well, that one would do it. You just squeal a little bit of tire on the way.
My dad tried to teach me how to drive a stick. He had an old Volkswagen. Wasn't a Bug. It was the Rabbit. We had a Volkswagen Rabbit, and Dad tried to teach me, put me on a hill. He's like, if you can learn how to drive it on a hill, you can learn to drive it anywhere. Yeah, that was probably a mistake. It didn't go very well, to say the least. I sort of remember driving. We had a Chevy truck. I kind of remember driving. Like it was like a family thing. Like we cut grass and stuff, and so we'd be down at my grandparents. And I remember trying to drive that once or twice. That didn't go very well. Probably why the truck didn't last as long.
Yeah.
No, that car behind me just. My father-in-law would love it. All my wife's cousins would love it. My wife would probably appreciate it a heck of a lot more than I would, but it would be completely lost on me. So, folks, if you want to come down, make sure you get down here to Nolf's and check out the Dodge Challenger. You said
Dodge Challenger.
Yeah, Dodge Challenger. See, I don't even like that. That's how little I know about. These guys are the two experts on that. But but that is a fantastic price.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic for 2012 Dodge Challenger. Come on down and take a look at it, folks, here at Nolf. Andy or Ronnie here, one of them will take care of you. I know that. So, guys, I expect to be gone by next week.
Gone.
Yeah, gone.
Might be going to my garage if my wife will let me.
Back to football here. Coming up this week, we've got Clearfield against USO and 4A in District 9. We've got the 3A game, sub-regional Somerset against Brockway. Congratulations to Brockway. Its first District 9 title since 2010.
Andy played in one of those D9 title games, right?
We didn't win the year. I was 98.
98.
I think we played Brookville that year.
Did you play Brookville over at Clarion High School, maybe? I remember there was a game down here at Red Bank, but it would have been in the early 2000s.
I felt like we played at Brookville, but that don't sound right. That's how important these district games are to old alumni.
Yeah, it's like I don't even remember where I played it at.
I actually have I have a box upstairs, and I forgot I even played in district championship until I was looking through the box, and we had this little medal, and I found my 1998 playbook. I brought it in for Ronnie, but they didn't want to use it.
Your final football season was 1998.
Yep.
Okay, so I got a story about being at Brockway. 1998 was my first year covering football in District 9. I was at the Clarion News, and you guys crushed Clarion that year up at Brockway, back when you still had the grass field and all that up there. And walking off the field, I was walking with Coach Weiser, who in the world knew that 26 years later I'd be doing games with them and all that. But walking off the field with Coach Weiser, and I'm this like wet behind the ear cub reporter, 3 months out of college. And I remember Coach Weiser telling me, he's like, Chris, you can criticize me all you want. Okay. He's like, I'm an adult. I'm the coach. Just don't go too hard on my kids. Like, he's like, they're just kids.
Yeah.
They're 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And, that's kind of stuck with me. If you notice, like, I'll be hard on coaches. I'll be hard on officials.
No.
I'll be hard on administrators. I'll be hard on you guys sometimes, but very seldom am I ever hard on a kid, because you got to remember something. We still are dealing with high school kids, and some of them are as young as 14 years old, and they are going to make mistakes because they're high school kids.
Yeah. At the end of it, I've said this a million times, adults ruin it for kids. And it is a game. We all love it, but it's still a game for those kids to play, fun times. And that's the best approach to take. If you want to give Weiser a hard time, give Weiser a hard time. But the quarterback that threw the interception in the fourth quarter, I'm sure he feels bad enough. He doesn't need some wet behind the ears reporter writing about it.
Or even some 26-year reporter who's no longer wet behind the ears writing about it at the end of the day. I mean, sometimes you'll be like, boy, that was dumb. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's just in the moment, you're like, that's dumb. But like at the end of the day, when you gave up 60 to Port, I put it on Ronnie Geist. I didn't put it on Drew Byers.
Yeah.
One thing I like to do, would you guys have been single A then?
No, that'd have been double A.
Yeah, we were
Double A.
I think Red Bank was double A back then too.
So the double A team of 99 versus the double A team of 2024, 2023,
98.
98.
I
I like to go back because it's a different style of football. You guys ran the ball like crazy.
you
Like,
never even knew who had the ball. Like
Yeah.
when Ray Reckner was running that offense, was the coach up there, the great Ray Reckner. You never knew who had the ball. They wear those black jerseys, and it was just black jerseys, black pants, and it blended in with the football. And you never knew who had the football. It's kind of like you still see that with Garden City a lot, right? You never knew who had the football. Then Frank Verichetti took over, and I remember like in the first game, I think Derek Baganza threw more passes in the first game of his freshman year, which was Frank Verichetti's first year as the head coach, than Brockway had thrown the entire season prior to that.
yeah, we've kind of gone backwards in time. There was probably a 10 to 12 year window there where everyone was throwing the ball, no one was running it, and you've seen this slow morph to go back to that.
I think you have to run the ball. I think you've got to be able to run the football if you're going to get where you want to go, especially this time of year. I mean, we've been really lucky so far. The weather's been nice, but it was a little bit chilly on Friday night down at everywhere. I was at Reimersburg, but it was a little chilly down there, and you had the leaves on the field and the grass, and now with the turf games coming up, and they'll pretty much everything from now on will be on turf. I don't know how I feel about that at the end of the day either. I get why they do it. I completely understand. Not sure I wouldn't. I put some stuff on grass though.
When did that? I was talking to a friend of mine. When did that happen where they put everything on turf?
Well, that started to happen when Clarion University got turf up at Memorial Field, and then Brockway and Garden City got turf, and Bradford got turf, and now Kane and Brookville, and more schools go to that turf. They had more opportunities, and they just were like, let's get these games on turf. We don't want to see the field be the deciding factor, but I don't know.
Putting it on turf is still kind of making the field the deciding factor.
It is, because I think it does give an advantage to teams that have speed or want to do certain things and stuff. So, but I mean, I don't know. I'm old school.
I will say I do like that. I mean, I don't know how the District 9 decides where they're, which field's picked or whatever, but I think it's good that we reward those local schools that put the turf in with the games. Like our game this week against Union AC, like I'm sure Clarion University could have been picked, but like to me, you reward that Brookville school for bring that game to their field. Same way you do with Brockway. A lot of the games are played at Brockway. Like I really like that.
See, and I can say this: there was a chance your game could have been at Memorial Stadium, but there's some things going on up there that didn't allow that to happen. And the reason they wanted to do that had a little bit to do with they wanted to play that Clearfield game on Friday, and they just don't have enough places. DuBois is undergone an athletic director change right now. The new athletic director hasn't started, so they're not hosting games. Then Clearfield's not going to host a game because they're playing. And Brockway wasn't going to host a game because they were playing, and they would have. I think they'd have liked to have seen Somerset possibly come up and play at Brockway, and then next year the AAA champion in District 9 go down and play at Somerset, but that didn't work out. So they were kind of limited in where they could play games. But obviously having Brookville opened up something that they maybe wouldn't have had before. They would have been in a little bit more of an issue, say last year before Brookville. Kane put in turf last year, and now they're getting a second playoff game up there. So there are more and more locations. And a Keystone Port game at Kane is really a great middle ground location for a game like that. The one school that I'm surprised hasn't gotten around to putting in turf yet that would have, I think, a lot of games at the end of the day is St. Mary's.
Yeah, that would be a good location to have it. it's good for the town of Kane as well. You're importing all those people in, they're stopping at stores. That tax base is funding that.
I can tell you this much: if I go up, I'll probably go up early and stop at the hot dog place, Texas Hot.
Isn't there a place up there called the Lunchbox or something like that?
If there is, I've never actually been to it.
Maybe not.
But I know there's Pepe's Pizza, and I might go up to Bell's Meats if I go up on, I don't know yet if we're doing a broadcast. So waiting some things. Maybe we'll do something with Ports people. Maybe we'll just let Ports people do it. They do a great job.
They do a really good job.
They do a great job with it. But one way or the other, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go up to that game. I think that it's a great opportunity to bring people into town and do things like that help the local economy, even for a day or a night or whatever. You may get some people coming early for dinner and all that. So
we kind of skimmed over it, but we were talking when we talked about the old team versus the 98 team versus 2024 team. There's always that debate that those old school guys are tougher, hard nosed. I'm sure Andy can attest to it. I'm sure his coach, you ran through the brick wall, whether you wanted to or not. Nowadays, do we have kids that are softer versus the older era where they're not as physical? I mean,
I think if you look at really take a Port Allegheny's playing like a 98 team, and then you got a Red Bank or Clarion. So I think it still comes down to athletes.
Put your best guys in the best spots, and that's what you run.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Guys get put in different spots now. Like a guy that maybe like Larry Weiser. I'm not sure Jace Ferguson back in 1998 is a quarterback for Larry Weiser. I think he might have been a running back.
Tailback.
Yeah, I think that you see things change, and so guys are in different positions than maybe they would have been in the, quarterback's all of a sudden more important than it was in 1998, right? Like, who was really throwing the ball? Red Bank was throwing the ball a little bit in 98, but weren't very many schools throwing it,
But you take like a Brockway, you still needed an athletic. We did a ton of option plays, so you still needed a guy that was maybe not throwing down the field, but he still had to be athletic. Like a Ferguson would have been great at that. So I don't know.
Now, were you guys, Andy, your line, were they blocking more in wing T concept, or were they more straightforward blocking? What were you guys doing up there?
We did a lot of pulling and trap blocking, a lot. And pretty much everything was, we did the double wing is what we ran when I was there. So wing back's always in motion, fullback's fake every time, quarterback's under the center. So the big thing was the belly the fullback, get that good fake every single play. Then usually your fullback was leading, and you had some sort of trap play or guard pulling on the blocks.
And from a defensive perspective, I always say like motion's hard for kids to understand, because it's hard enough to get them to stand where they should stand, and now you put an offensive guy in motion. Naturally, their eyes look to that, and it changes the whole. So you take a system that was probably simpler than what a lot of schools now are running, but one complex aspect of it, which is the motion, changes everything. You take a simple thing, make it harder just on the defense.
And throw in a tight end dump pass.
Once, twice a game.
Or twice half a year.
Yeah, I was going to say more like once or twice half a season with Brockway back in those days. Ran into Ray Reckner outside of the Riverside Bilo up there a couple of years ago. I was doing a football game, and he just happened to be in the parking lot, and we had a nice conversation. Those old school guys, for the longest time, the football coaches never changed. You had Larry Weiser at Clarion, Clyde Conti at CL, Ray Reckner at Brockway, Paul Simcoe at Coudersport, DeFilippi at Smethport,
Dave Moore down here.
Yeah, Dave Moore, Red Bank. The coaches, the coaching carousel wasn't what it is today, and I think it led to more success long term because things weren't changing every 4 or 5 years, and part of it was society was different. I think more teachers coached. It was a supplement to their income that maybe isn't as necessary now. Parents have changed. Parents now, in the old days, I'm sure, Andy, your dad was probably like, Andy, you're going to listen to what Ray Reckner says, and Ray Reckner's right and you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen as much anymore. And I don't know why that changed or how that changed, but it has changed.
Well, there's some also, though, when he and I played, football wasn't a year-round sport. So now you have to be, a lot of programs expect their coaches to be there, 10, 11 months out of the year. Not the school. The school doesn't expect that. The program, in order to be successful, you have to be involved, whether that's weight room, clinics. There's things to do, and so I guess what I'm getting at is it's easier to coach for 4 or 5 months for 40 years than it is to coach for 11 months for the same 40 years. Not to take anything away from those. I'm not saying that older generation. I'm just saying the sport has evolved.
Yeah, like
Is it evolved for the best?
Well, I mean,
depends if you like football,
yeah,
or whatever sport.
If you ask my wife, no.
I think it's hard on, I know we talk about different things. The kid wants to get a summer job, but is afraid his summer job is going to interfere with him getting the potential to step foot on the field because he's not making 7-on-7 and stuff. Sometimes I feel like at that point, are you losing sight of what a high school football game should be for a kid?
I think you talk to Coach Gold at Red Bank, and talking to him over the last couple of years, he's kind of like evolved a little bit in this aspect. I think when he first started coaching, he thought he was going to get a lot of kids going to college and things like that. Now he's started to realize that 95% of these kids are just playing high school football and make it the best 4 years that you can for those kids. And I think that's a really healthy attitude to have along that line, because most of these kids that are playing high school football are not playing football at the next level. Let's just be honest with it. And it's even less in District 9 than it is in District 10, and it's less in District 10 than it is in the WPIL. And even at the WPIL, it's only a select handful of schools.
Well, it's even the ones that maybe athletically can play at the next level. It's a whole different love to play at that next level. You have to, it's a culture shock to go there and not be the number one guy when you've been the number one guy for 2 or 3 years at your high school. And you might love the sport. I loved the sport, but I wasn't built to play high level college football. And I found love for the sport in a different way. I found it through coaching. I found it through helping kids, in the weight room, my own kids. Like there's a way to continue that. It doesn't always have to be in the athletic, actual on the field form.
I feel like kind of the demands that we put on high school kids, and not just football, but every sport now, leads to a lot more burnout than there used to be.
I definitely agree.
Good.
Yeah, I was just you go back to there's no build up for the excitement. If you think of the football days like Ronnie was talking about, where it's 4 months or 5 months out of the year, you waited all year for that build up. Then you go play football. You might lift weights or so, but you're not doing all these 7-on-7s and all. I'm not saying everywhere. I'm saying typically in our area here is the way it was. And now it's like there's probably still a sense of gratification, but you don't have that same type of build up. And then the other pressure it puts on is multiple athletes or, multiple sports. Yeah. You got a guy that wants to put as much as he can into maybe football, basketball, and baseball, but yet each one's pulling them their own direction. So it's tough to juggle that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we're talking football, but you have fall baseball, fall softball, basketball goes year round. You have the AAU, you have the JOs in volleyball. Like volleyball's going on while basketball's going on, and so it's every sport has become the most important sport, as opposed to what it used to be, which was like fall came around and you were a boy, you were playing football. And then when when winter came around, you were playing basketball or you were wrestling. And then when the spring came around, you were running track or playing baseball. now as we're talking, like, it's just not that way. They expect every one of those sports expects you to be there 24/7, 365 days of the year. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's basically what the expectation is. And so then you get into issues where the basketball coach is mad at the football coach and the football coach is mad at the baseball coach. And, none of that I think is healthy at the high school level.
No, I think, excuse me, I think there are times to specialize. Like I would make the argument, if you're end of your sophomore year and you want to, hey, I want to play college football, I want to play basketball, I want to play volleyball. Like you can make the argument for specialization maybe at that point, but ultimately it's what the kid wants to do. I mean, if that kid's athletes are athletes. I mean, I played when Hayden Johnson was at CL. Hayden Johnson was probably the best athlete in District
So it
9.
makes you feel old that his nephew is the starting quarterback at Karn City.
Well, I played against his dad too.
Yeah, I mean, does that make you feel old? I mean, I know it makes me feel old that I'm still sitting there thinking it wasn't that long ago that I was watching Hayden and Jordan play, and now Cole, not only is Cole playing, he's a sophomore, for crying out. Like, come on, what the heck? In my mind, in my mind, it's also like 2009 isn't when like all these sophomores were like born, but 2009 is like when these sophomores were born. Like, what are we doing?
I will say if you are, trying to take your program to the next level, the top programs in the state of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, all the big states, they are football 12 months out of the year.
So reality though, let's
now I think there will be a 1 or 2% that, hey, this kid's a D1 stud. It doesn't matter. He can play basketball. He can play baseball. He can do it all.
In reality though, how many programs do we have in District 9 that can consistently be at the level that you're talking about when you're talking about that level?
Well, with the separation of all the six divisions, I'd say it's a more likely chance than it was when me and Andy played. In reality, in District 9, now I'm talking all sports, not just obviously because girls volleyball at Clarion's proven that they can do it.
Yeah, but let's talk about football. Football reality wise.
Football reality wise is, I would say you could argue Clarion and AA could sustain the point where they're a top 10 to 15 team repeatedly every year. Port has proven that over the last couple years, but can they keep the numbers? And
yeah, I mean, I feel like Port's like a generational thing. You had the generation of Matt Bodemer and those guys, and then you had it fall completely off, and now it's back. But like, I am concerned about like where that program goes after this group of kids goes through. They're not playing JV football right now, that sort of stuff.
I'll answer. I'd say it's very hard to sustain it.
Correct.
Because the example you've just given is single A athletes, for instance. The schools just aren't big enough. There's going to be a fall off in that roller coaster, and even at the double A.
I mean, the bigger question is, and we've talked about this earlier in the year, is like without co-ops, how close are we to 8-man football in some of these places?
Well, I was going to kind of go to that. Like the only way in my mind to be a top single A team in Pennsylvania is you probably have to be on the top of the single A. You have to be graduating that 105 kids, because that gives you just the amount of kids where it's more likely that you can put 8, 9 really good athletes on the field. But ultimately, if you're doing that, you're robbing those kids from basketball, you're robbing them from soccer, you're robbing them from all those other sports.
I was talking to I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No,
I was talking to the Otto Elger basketball coach Thursday and Friday before they played. And I think his biggest concern about the football game was, hey, are my guys going to stay healthy enough to play basketball? Because like they're decent in football, but they have a chance to be special in basketball.
Yeah.
And
so
because they only need a few.
Yeah, because you don't need as many to be. And where they were strong in football was, and kudos to what they did this year. I mean, they had 7 wins, which was the most wins that had at Otto Elgin since 1976. What they did well in football this year was their skill guys were good.
Their skill guys
are as good as anybody's skill guys in District 9. what hurt them against Union AC on Friday night, they don't have quite the linemen, and you're just limited. You take a school like Otto Eldred in Oswego Valley, which is a co-op in football, you just don't have some of the kids that like you might have at Central Clarion with the 3 schools involved and stuff like that. And so it just, that was what the difference in that game was. And they knew that going in. You talked to Troy Cook, their head coach. I was talking to him on the field. He goes, I'm like, how do you think it'll go? He goes, well, it's going to really come down. He's like, our guys up front are smaller than their guys. And if our guys get pushed around, it's going to be a long night. And at the end of the day, that was a pretty good assessment of what happened in that football game. They had the skill guys. Their skill guys, love your skill guys at Red Bank. I'd take the skill guys at Otto over the skill guys at Red Bank. And that's not a crush on the kids at Red Bank. That's how much I like the skill guy. Like the Sheen Thomas. Yeah, there's not a school in District 9 that wouldn't love to have Sheen Thomas at wide receiver. There's not a school in District 9 that wouldn't love to have a David Shenfield. They have him kind of in the slot, but he could be a tight end too. There's not a team that wouldn't love to have Manning Splain at wide receiver. Shane McGee, if he's not playing quarterback, and he's a decent quarterback, if he's not playing quarterback for you, he's going to play wide receiver for you. Like, those are guys that are on the football field for every team in District 9.
Yeah. They look good on film, I can tell you that. They obviously are athletic on the outsides.
What they could do skill-wise, like I said, I mean, they're as good as anybody in District 9 skill-wise. They just didn't quite have what they needed on the line, and it wasn't because those kids weren't trying or weren't. They size-wise, they just weren't there.
That kind of goes back to that. You briefly talked about that co-op. You take a situation where they have 5 good athletes, and if they co-op with a school that has even 3 big, beefy linemen that can move, now you put them together. Now that's a team to be reckoned with.
You look at Central Clarion, right? And you have Jace Ferguson, and Jace Ferguson is one of their top skilled athletes, right? You then take Cohen Kemmer, and he's one of their top skilled athletes. CL would have had a couple of really good pieces there as a single A football team, right? But then you look at the line, who's anchoring that line? Jimmy Kerr from Clarion, Hayden Hyman from Clarion. So, like, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, now, obviously, Clarion has some skilled kids that are part of that co-op too, but that's what you're talking about, because CL would have gone from having, maybe decent linemen to now Jace Ferguson's got great linemen in front of him, right? Like, there's a difference when you have good linemen versus great linemen.
And that kind of goes back to those peaks and valleys that those small single A schools are going to have, with that system of a co-op. You take that valley out. There's still a valley, but it's not.
But sometimes it's not as deep of a valley. Like, one of your biggest issues at Red Bank this year has been you've been playing a lot of young kids on the line.
Yeah.
And maybe in a co-op, let's say you were co-op with, we'll just say Brookville. Maybe you're not forced to have as many young kids on the line because now you've got a second school in there. And so now some of those young kids can develop. Instead of having to develop at the varsity level, they're developing at the JV level. So, there is advantages to the co-ops, and especially at small schools. And I think that if you're going to continue to talk about 11-man football, more and more schools are going to have to co-op for it to survive because of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I kind of joke that if Carter Terwent lived 4 miles this direction, we would have won a state championship, because Carter Terwent on our state championship team.
You lost by 7, and he's a 7-point difference.
Yeah. It's just fun to play those games, what ifs, if thens.
How much better did Karn City become when East Brady closed, and then a couple years later they got those East Brady kids, it was a massive advantage to them. And so that's why when I see some people complaining about, we lost to 3 schools and it's Karn City people, it's like, boy, you don't remember that 30 years ago you guys got a pretty big extra advantage there when you got East Brady was one of the best football programs in District 9, and you added them, and maybe you didn't add them as a co-op, but you added them to your school district. And so, you went from being a good program to a great program, partly because you got kids from East Brady, and nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's wrong or anything, but that's how some of these programs of, Du Bois used to have, how many schools did you have that became Du Bois? You had Reynoldsville and Sykesville, and these were all good football programs. And then they all became Du Bois at some point. And, it's things change as we go through time. And so I think we'll continue to see things change. What are your thoughts? We didn't talk at all about the single A. We have semifinals with a rematch between Union AC Valley and Red Bank, and then we have Port and Keystone, another rematch. So everybody's seen each other. Will things hold the way they did last year, or the first time this year, or will either of those teams that lost Union AC Valley or Port or Keystone be able to switch things around?
Well, I mean, I said weeks ago, Union just keeps getting better and better. Week 1, we probably caught them at the right time. From a coaching perspective, they got a quarterback that threw for 1,000, rushed for 1,000, running back that rushed for 1,000. Like you said earlier, they got an offensive line that's big. They're physical. I mean, if there's anyone that can turn it around, to me, it's Union. I get it. What we beat them 40-something to 13. I mean,
41-13, I think was the final.
So, I mean, that's a big flop to flip in a couple weeks, but, I think they can definitely fight the battle, and they're built to do it, I guess is the best way to put it.
And they've got Willis Reed. I'm sorry, Max Gallagher. I'm sure most of the audience don't even understand the reference of Willis Reed getting hurt in the 1970 NBA Finals. Missed Game 6, comes back in Game 7, and plays a big role in the Knicks winning the NBA title. Max Gallagher didn't practice one day last week. He hurt himself weed whacking. I mean, these are the other things we talk about, right? Like, do you think that Mike Tomlin is worried about losing TJ Watt to weed whacking accident?
Well, if he wouldn't have weed whacked, his mom might have weed whacked his head. So
might have. So I mean, that's what we're talking about there, right? And so sometimes it takes luck. Sometimes that luck is good. Sometimes that luck is bad. Central Clarion got Euchred back to kick last Friday. Didn't see that coming. Didn't play in the soccer game, the soccer championship game, and they probably lost because they didn't have him. But now they got him back kicking for football. How big of a difference is that for Central Clarion to have him back kicking?
Just another weapon to add to that pile.
All of a sudden, kickoffs are back down to the goal line, into the end zone. Kick field goals. I mean, Owen Roken, the freshman at Punxsutawney, might be my rookie of the year. What's he done all year? He's kicked. But he was a big difference maker for the Chucks and almost won them a playoff game. Kicked 2 field goals in the fourth quarter as a freshman. Can you imagine being a freshman going out and being asked to kick 2 field goals with your team down?
I can't. No, absolutely not.
Speaking of playing days, Ryan Pugh and I were talking. Ryan Pugh, the great editor now, the Clarion News, sports editor, still does a lot of sports up there. We were talking the other day, and your name came up, Ronnie. You remember the game maybe where Waz ran you like 30 or 40 times in a game? You remember that?
Yeah, that happened a few times, I suppose.
Did you hurt your knee when you were still in high school, or was it after you got out of high school?
I blew my shoulder out in high school.
Shoulder, okay.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the different sports and things, and Ben Kundik, was the infamous wrestling coach at Red Bank Valley for a long time, and he told me, "You're going to ruin yourself for wrestling. You're playing that football," in his grizzly old attitude. Well, he was right. I mean, I never looked at wrestling as my primary sport, but in reality, I was built much better to wrestle than I was to play.
What'd you wrestle at?
I wrestled at 171.
What happened?
I ate that 171 pounder.
So me. Wearing black to slim down.
But yeah, well, we go back to what we were talking about before. That was just the way the offenses were ran then. It was give the guy the ball and let him run.
Yeah, it was. Guys, that's going to pretty much wrap us up this week. We'll do another one of these next week, win or lose for Red Bank.
Yeah,
we'll still
hopefully win.
Yeah, hopefully for you guys it's a win. Me, I don't care who wins. I actually, none of it matters to me. Like, somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to play in the championship game.
Yeah,
I'll have a championship game together.
The only thing that matters to me is that you drive this Challenger to that next game.
I don't think that's happening. I'll tell you what. You guys win, and you can drive me to the game in the Challenger. How's that sound? Well, guys, thanks again. Another edition of the Nolf Bites here at Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram. And tell people again about the Challenger behind us.
That Challenger is a 2012, 80-some thousand miles on it. It's a RT 5.7 Hemi, 6-speed. And you can own that right now for $17,998.
Great deal. Come on down, talk to Ronnie, talk to Andy here. They'll get you set up with that car, and don't hesitate because something tells me that car's not staying here very long.
We hope not.
Anyhow, folks,